All right, so get ready because today we're taking a deep dive into something both fascinating and a little spooky.
Oh, I like where this is going.
You know, we love to explore the strange and unusual here,
We do.
and we've gotten a ton of requests from you to tackle the topic of obsession,
Okay.
but not the kind of obsession you might be thinking of.
Right.
We're not talking about, endlessly scrolling through your ex's social media.
Been there.
Yeah, we're going way beyond that.
Okay.
We're diving into the spiritist concept of spirit obsession.
Now that is interesting.
And let me tell you, it is way more complex than your typical ghost story.
I bet. I mean, I'm already intrigued and I haven't even heard anything yet.
So to guide our deep dive today, we're turning to excerpts from the Wikipedia article on obsession, spiritism.
Makes sense.
And our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to unpack how this belief system, this whole idea of spirit obsession, it really sets itself apart from your typical ghost stories, the ones you hear around a campfire.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught up in the spooky stories, the haunted house aspect of it all.
It's true.
But Spiritism takes things in a whole different direction.
Yeah.
It's less about paranormal activity and more about the really intricate ways spirits might actually be interacting
Okay.
with each other and even, get this, with us.
Okay, so you're saying it's not just ghosts doing ghostly things in a vacuum?
Not at all. Think of it more like a network or even better, a web of influence.
Okay, I'm listening. A web of influence.
Where the lines between the living and the, what do we even call it, the unliving? Well, those lines get really blurry.
Okay, so you're telling me it's not just about, like, a ghost haunting a house, but a whole network of unseen interactions happening all around us.
Exactly. Spirits influencing each other, maybe even the living affecting spirits, or even, and this is where it gets really wild, living people impacting each other through these unseen energies.
Okay, hold on. I need a minute to process this. Living people influencing each other through, wait, what did you call it?
I called it a web of influence.
Right. A web of influence. Okay, this is already making my head spin a little.
It's a lot to take in, for sure.
So we're talking influence, different degrees of influence.
Exactly.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's rewind for a second. What does obsession even mean in the context of spiritism?
So we're talking about influence, right? But not the kind of positive, like follow your bliss kind of influence.
Okay, I'm with you.
In Spiritism, obsession is all about how one spirit can have power over another spirit.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. It's not a one-way street.
What do you mean?
It's not just about spirits messing with us humans. We're talking about something much bigger here.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Who else is involved in this whole spiritual tug of war? I need details.
Okay, so picture this. A whole web of influence.
You're really into this web analogy.
It's the best way I can describe it.
Okay, fair enough. Continue.
We're talking about spirits influencing other spirits. We're talking about the living, maybe somehow affecting spirits. And yeah, even living people impacting each other through these unseen energies.
Okay, so it's way more nuanced than just saying, oh, that house is haunted.
Way more nuanced. And that's what makes it so fascinating.
Okay, so it's not just about being haunted, but these varying degrees of influence you're talking about.
Precisely.
And speaking of degrees, our source mentions that there are different levels of obsession. It's starting to sound a little bit like a video game.
You're not wrong. Spiritism breaks it down into 3 distinct levels. And just like in a video game, each one is more intense than the last. You've got simple obsession, fascination, and subjugation.
Subjugation. Okay, that last one definitely sounds like a final boss level.
Right.
But let's break these down, starting with simple obsession.
Okay.
What's going on at this level?
Basically, imagine a spirit's trying to get your attention, but they're not exactly being subtle about it.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Think of it like that friend who always conveniently forgets their wallet when it's time to pay the bill.
Oh, I know that friend.
Right. Except instead of being after your cash, they're trying to snag your energy or your attention.
Okay.
So we could be talking about weird whispers you can't quite make out, your mood suddenly taking a nosedive for no reason, or even just those little annoying inconveniences that pop up in your day-to-day life.
So less about, like, demonic possession and more like a kind of low-key spiritual annoyance.
You got it. And here's the thing about this level. The person being targeted usually senses something's off. Like, they know something's not quite right.
Okay.
They haven't been completely taken over by it, and they can usually, at least to some extent, resist those little nudges from the spirit.
Okay, so there's still some self-awareness there, some pushback happening.
Right, exactly. They're aware something's going on.
What about fascination? That's the next level, right?
That's where things start to escalate.
Okay, tell me more. Tell me more.
So picture this. A spirit whispers a little doubt in your ear or plants a seed of desire in your mind, and they do all of this while disguised as your biggest cheerleader.
Oh, that's sneaky.
They're playing the long game here, using persuasion and manipulation, gaining your trust so they can further their own agenda.
It's like they're trying to butter you up.
Exactly.
So it's less of a ghostly slap in the face and more of a gradual, kind of insidious whisper in your ear that slowly starts to wear you down.
Precisely. And that's where the real danger lies with this level of obsession.
How so?
Because people who get caught in this web of fascination, they often have no clue they're being played.
Oh, wow.
They genuinely believe they're the ones in the driver's seat, making their own choices, completely oblivious to the puppet master pulling the strings behind the scenes.
That is seriously creepy. It's giving me cult documentary vibes.
Right.
So we've gone from these subtle, annoying nudges to full-blown manipulative mind games. Where does subjugation fit into all of this?
Okay, so that's the big leagues, right? We're talking about major influence.
Like next level influence.
Yeah, like where a spirit can override someone's sense of self, even potentially take control of their body, their actions.
Okay, so this is like full-on Hollywood-style possession. I need to hear everything about this, like, right now.
It really is like something straight out of a movie.
Right. Give me all the details.
So subjugation is like the most extreme form of all of this spiritual obsession.
Okay.
And it's where a spirit can basically override someone's sense of self, their free will, everything.
So they're basically along for the ride at that point.
Basically. And you can even get to the point where the spirit takes control of their body and their actions.
Okay, see, this is the kind of stuff that makes you sleep with the lights on. But seriously, what would drive a spirit to resort to that level of, like, control over another being?
Right. It's intense.
It's not like they're just, browsing through some cosmic menu of options and they're like, oh, I'll take the possess a human today.
Possess a human, extra crispy.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the deal? Why would they go to such extremes?
Well, it's interesting because our source explains that sometimes, these spirits, they're driven by desires that we can actually relate to as humans.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like we're talking jealousy, a thirst for revenge, maybe even just a good old-fashioned power trip.
So you're saying even in the afterlife, some things never change?
Apparently not. But it gets even more complex because, you mentioned it earlier, there are those reasons that are really unique to the spirit world, things we can only imagine.
Right, right. Okay, so walk me through those. What kind of spirit world specific motivations are we talking about here?
Okay, so imagine this.
Yeah.
You're a spirit now,
Yeah.
right? You're no longer bound by this physical world.
Okay.
But let's say you still crave those things you can no longer experience firsthand.
Like what?
Oh, I don't know, like a delicious meal, the thrill of a roller coaster ride,
Okay, I can see that.
even the warmth of human connection.
So you're saying some spirits, they're basically clinging to those earthly pleasures, and they might try to, experience them vicariously through a living person.
It's like that friend, or maybe you've been that friend, who insists on ordering all your favorite foods,
Oh, yeah.
but they won't even touch their own plate,
All right, I get it. But this time, it's not just about sharing a pizza. There are some heavy spiritual strings attached.
Exactly. But it's not always about those base desires either.
Okay, so what about the spirits who aren't necessarily driven by those earthly cravings? What else might lead them down this path of obsession?
Well, think about those relationships that were, deeply intertwined in life.
Okay.
Lovers, family members, even rivals,
Yeah.
Those bonds, especially if they were cut short or ended abruptly,
Yeah.
they can leave a spirit tethered. You know what I mean?
No finished business.
Yeah, exactly. And that lingering connection, even if it starts out with good intentions,
Right.
it can, over time, morph into a form of obsession.
Wow. So it's almost like this recipe for some serious spiritual baggage.
Right.
Both for the spirit and for the living person who's stuck in the middle of all of it.
So-
And that actually makes me think about something else the source mentioned, something you were talking about earlier, this whole idea of mediumship.
Okay.
So if everyone's born with some level of this ability, this kind of sixth sense,
Right.
wouldn't that mean that some people are just naturally more susceptible to these spiritual influences, like more easily influenced?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Imagine it like this. Some people they have a stronger signal, right? Like
Mm.
their antenna for the spirit world is just bigger.
Okay. I like that
So
analogy.
they're more receptive to those whispers, those nudges from the other side.
That makes sense.
And according to Spiritism, those folks, the ones with those more developed mediumistic abilities, they really need to be super careful, especially if they're, diving into this world without the proper understanding and training.
It's like jumping into the ocean without knowing how to swim. You're going to have a bad time.
Exactly. You need to learn how to navigate those waters, how to distinguish between let's say, the friendly dolphins
Right.
and the sharks.
The ones with a not-so-friendly agenda.
Exactly. It's about learning how to set healthy boundaries in that unseen world. Think of it like a crash course in spiritual self-defense.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that we're not just sitting ducks in all of this, right? We have some agency, some control over how these interactions play out.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to a really crucial concept in Spiritism, this idea of disobsession.
Okay, so if obsession is like this potential danger lurking out there,
Mm-hmm.
then there must be ways to combat it, right?
Exactly. And that's where disobsession comes in. It's about finding ways to, let's say, restore balance when things have gone sideways.
Okay, so how do we evict those unwanted spiritual tenants? Are we talking about those dramatic exorcisms we see in the movies, with the yelling and the holy water and all that?
Not quite. It's a little less Hollywood and a little more, shall we say, holistic.
Okay.
Spiritists, they have a different approach.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
It's not about brute spiritual force or anything like that. Disobsession is more about getting to the core of the issue, like figuring out what's going on, why is this happening, and then helping both the spirit and the person find some peace and understanding.
Okay, now that sounds more my speed. Less
Yeah.
yelling, more understanding. I like it. So what does this disobsession process actually look like in practice?
So prayer is a big one, but it's not just about mindlessly reciting words.
Right.
It's about this genuine plea for guidance, for protection, for the inner strength to break free from negative influences.
So like a direct line to spiritual support.
Exactly. But it's not just about external help either. Spiritists, they really emphasize the importance of self-reflection.
Oh, okay. So looking inward as well.
Exactly. Because sometimes, it's our own thoughts, actions, or unresolved issues that make us more vulnerable to these unwanted influences in the first place.
So it's not always about blaming outside forces. Sometimes we need to take a look in the mirror.
Exactly. We got to be accountable for our own energy.
That's deep. What else can we do to address those spiritual imbalances?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm ready.
Sometimes the most effective way to help an obsessing spirit is to, and this might sound counterintuitive,
Okay.
to engage with it directly.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying we should just strike up a conversation with the spirit that's causing all the trouble?
In a way, yes. Though, to be clear, this is usually done through, experienced mediums.
Okay.
They act like a bridge between the two worlds.
Right. So they're like spiritual negotiators or something.
Exactly. They can communicate with the spirit, figure out what's going on, why are they so attached, what's motivating their actions.
Like a spiritual intervention, but with a good dose of empathy and understanding.
Exactly. It's about guiding them toward healing and liberation, both for the spirit and the person they're affecting.
Who knew spirits needed therapy, too?
Right. It all circles back to that web of influence we were talking about earlier. Everything is connected. But it also brings us to something really important that our source touches upon.
Oh, what's that?
This whole ethical dimension of spirit obsession.
Okay, yeah, because if some spirits are out there intentionally causing harm, even if they believe it's for some, greater good,
Right.
doesn't that raise some serious moral red flags?
Yeah. And it gets even trickier
Okay.
because the source even says that some folks in Spiritism, they believe these obsessions, they're orchestrated.
Orchestrated by who?
Well, by spirits, obviously.
Yeah.
But the idea is that it's intentional.
Okay.
Like they're putting on a show
A show? For what purpose?
to provide proof, to convince the skeptics that this unseen world is real.
So it's like they're using a person's experience, their potential suffering,
Right.
as evidence?
Kind of, yeah.
That feels, I don't know, wrong on so many levels.
It's ethically complicated, for sure.
That's putting it mildly. It's like some cosmic magic show, but with someone else's well-being on the line.
Yeah.
And what about the person who's being used as this, exhibit? Do they get a say in any of this? It feels like a major breach of free will.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, our source doesn't really offer any easy answers.
It doesn't.
Not really.
Figures.
But I think it's safe to say that even within Spiritism, there are probably a lot of different opinions on this whole issue, you know?
Yeah.
It's a topic that definitely sparks debate, forces you to really confront some uncomfortable truths about, well, about belief and influence.
Right. It makes you really stop and think.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's a good reminder that even within something like Spiritism, a belief system that's been around for centuries, there's still room for debate, for different perspectives, for nuance.
100%. And that's what makes exploring these topics so fascinating.
It's true. It's about asking the tough questions, not just accepting things at face value.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today. We've delved into this whole concept of spirit obsession, peeled back those layers of influence, looked at the potential dangers, even touched on those ethical quandaries that kind of make your head spin.
It's a lot to process, but it's important stuff.
Absolutely. It's about expanding our understanding of the world, both seen and unseen, right?
And maybe even sparking some of our own introspection along the way.
I like that. So as always, folks, we encourage you to keep those questions coming, keep exploring, keep diving deeper into these fascinating mysteries.
Until next time.
See you then.